Hello, and welcome to Ending Physician Overwhelm. I'm your host, Dr. Megan Mello. I'm a family and obesity medicine physician, as well as a certified life coach for physicians. In this podcast, we talk about how the learned habits of people-pleasing, perfectionism, and a lack of boundaries show up in our lives and how they contribute to burnout, exhaustion, and overwhelm. The healthcare system is broken, my friends, but let's not wait for it to be fixed in order to feel better. Without giving it too much thought, tell me a place in your life that is not home and not work, where you feel like yourself, where you feel engaged, curious, just like a human. And no, sit in your car in the driveway does not count. Today we are talking about the concept of a third place, and we're going to talk about it both as potentially a physical space, as originally the phrase came to be, but also a hobby, something in your life that fills that purpose. If you are old enough to have watched Friends the first go around, or perhaps you caught it on reruns, again, if you're old enough, or, the streaming services, you recall the coffee shop, right? Where the friends would gather downstairs from their apartments. It wasn't work, although Rachel did work there for a time. That is a third place. And the term came out of a book from sociologist Ray Oldenburg in 1989. I was kind of surprised that it was that new. But the concept is a place, this that he talks about is a physical place that is not home and not work, that meets roughly 5 characteristics. And I'm going to go through those. So as I'm reading these, we can think about a place, but I also want you to connect with, is there an activity or some part of my life that feels like that? And if not, don't worry, we're going to find it. So here are the 5 characteristics. Neutral ground, by which a definition came up. People feel like they can come and go freely, right? You're not stuck in baby jail waiting for the mom to go into labor, right? You can come and go as you please. Leveler, not hindered by social or economic status. Conversation hub, activities are centered on engagement, dialogue, right? There's connection and community involved, implicit in this definition. Accessibility. It's a space that's welcoming, and accommodating. And finally, regulars. There are a core group of regulars who visit and set the tone and the personality of this place. So again, in the original conception, this was thought to be a physical space that was not home and not work and met these attributes. And when I think of that for myself, my husband and I were talking about this, and I identify that, coffee shops are a really restful, connecting place, even if they are not in my hometown. The act of going to a coffee shop and sitting and taking a book or a journal or something and just being in that space feels very connecting for me, regardless of whether I'm interacting with other humans. But it might be an activity as well. And I would argue that many of you would probably identify something in your life that feels like it sort of meets these criteria, where no one is forced to go, the space is welcoming, there are regulars who show up there, there's conversation, and we don't need our doctor status to get in. That is really key when we're thinking about what we're the subject matter today because I want us to make sure that we have a place outside our home and outside work, a place where we don't need that doctor identity. We'll talk about why that is important. But just to say that the doctor identity is not important in this space, we all need that. That can help to bring some humility. It can help to let us connect with the parts of ourselves, right, that are not physicians. And frankly, it's good for our nervous system. Our brain needs time and space away from being fully immersed in medicine, as so many of us, did during medical school and training, right? We had to jump feet first. If you were in different circumstances during medical school, perhaps you had a young family, perhaps you went through a pregnancy, or you were caring for someone who needed you, right? You may not have been as immersed as those of us who went through that training in a different phase of our lives, but still, you were probably pretty stuck between those two worlds. Our brain needs to be able to think of things outside of medicine and outside of whatever responsibilities we have at home. Our nervous system also needs that. It needs to be able to have some time and space that is not fully steeped in the caregiving of others, right? And for many of us, we have caregiving responsibilities at home and at work. We need something else. And finally, I would argue that we need to be able to find meaning and connection and curiosity with humans that we're not related to, and that, again, are not in the patient and work realm. We need to be able to find meaning, joy, curiosity, connection outside of work, and not only at home. This is really important, especially because so many physicians are so wrapped up in their identity as physicians. They may feel like they do best in that arena and maybe struggle somewhat at home. But we need to have other spaces too, other spaces where we don't have that same responsibility, where people don't identify our authority or education first, where people don't place that degree of responsibility. Now, none of that sounds very fun, but I'm going to go through some different ideas for you to think about what might a third place look like for you, focusing more on the sort of doing spaces rather than physical spaces. And I'm going to highlight 3 things that I think are not counting as third places, but you might be thinking are your third place. All right. So I'm going to go through in no particular order with a caveat, again, some ideas. And as I'm listing these off, I want you to just think, has this thing been a part of my life in the past? Did I enjoy it? Am I doing it now? Do I feel like that is something for me? Because again, for many of us, we might have been engaged with one of these activities for a long time, maybe since we were kids, and somewhere along the way we gave it up. Maybe during medical training, maybe when we became parents or caregivers. I would argue again that it would be to our benefit to bring one of those things back in, even if you're in a season where it needs to be tiny, tiny bit, right? Perhaps you really are struggling because we've got work, Perhaps you have little kids at home, or again, an aging parent or an aging pet, and you just don't have much margin. But if you could bring in or continue something for yourself that is outside of those places, even if it's small, that still can feel connecting and grounding and healing in a way that we all need. So again, as I'm reading through these different options, I want you to think through, what would that be for me? What has it been for me? And do I need to spend a little time and energy reconnecting with that thing? So, all right, running is first. I didn't want to write down running first because it's loaded. I remember on the first day of medical school many moons ago, and we were sitting in the lecture hall, all of us together for the first time in this classroom. And one of the professors told us, well, you really should take up a hobby like running. And I remember looking around and just being very confused, thinking, aren't we here to learn medicine? Why is he giving me a lecture about running? Now, looking back, what he meant was that you need something outside of medicine. And I'm just going to say he was from a generation where he was an older man. Not that running is the purview of older men, right? But there probably were a fairly limited number of activities because that's the only example he gave. He could have come up with a few more. He didn't. But I always think running, tennis, golf, right, as the three sort of old men activities. Again, not that you have to be an old man to do those activities. This is quite a tangent. But running, especially in a group, or running because you love it and you love it so much that you choose to do long runs by yourself or, compete, and you find a lot of meaning in it. Again, we're just connecting with this idea, right? That an activity is something that feels welcoming, centering, accessible. You don't need your degree. You can come and go and sort of drop in and out. That's what we're focusing on. And I know a lot of people really connect that with running. For me, not really a runner. I do feel that way about walking. Walking is a lot less sexy to talk about. But again, we're sort of thinking in generalities here. Okay, tangent aside. Gardening. Even if we're talking about keeping a few potted plants alive, if you love puttering around your house or outside and spending a bit of time cultivating plants, maybe you talk to your plants, that is in the vein that we're talking about. Artisanal cooking. Now, that does not necessarily mean something super fancy, but I'm talking about cooking that is something not directly necessary for your survival, right? If you are cooking to feed yourself breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and it's fairly straightforward, you're trying to keep other humans alive by cooking for them, that's a chore. But I'm talking artisanal cooking where you're doing something in part just because you love doing it. Sourdough bread baking, right? That was a thing during the pandemic. My husband only recently got into that. We'll see where that goes. I've been pickling and making jams, right? I don't need to do that. It's kind of fun. Artisanal cooking, right? So something that, again, might have a little hobby nature to it, but you can sort of pick it up and do it when you want. You can talk to other people. You can go into communities. That's what we're focusing on. Similarly, other crafts. A lot of people love to knit. Making Taylor Swift bracelets, something that you might do in community, taking an art class of some kind. Season tickets. I was thinking season tickets to, I don't know, musical theater or something, but I suppose for sports fans, right? Season tickets to some kind of sports thing. But again, There's a community aspect to it. There is no need to tell people what you do. You might see people on the regular. That's what we're going for. Playing a sport, same kind of idea. Having a fun side business. Now, if you are a private practice owner, that does not count here, right? That is your work. What I'm talking about is maybe you are someone who does some artisanal cooking. I don't know, maybe you're a jam maker or bake something and you have a little side business where you show up and sell that to other people or you make cakes for people or something, right? That would count in this sort of hobby and community vein. Fitness. This again is fitness where we aren't just trying to improve our health, but there's something else about it that feels compelling, that feels meaningful in some way. That might be yoga that makes you feel really rested and grounded. It might be CrossFit because you are just a human that loves CrossFit. I always think of people who are really into CrossFit as people who really loved PE in school. I see lots of adults really enjoying that. It's not for me, that's okay, right? But fitness in that vein, not just fitness in, well, I know I should exercise and I'm going to do it. Hiking, kayaking, paddleboarding, right? Getting some time out in nature. It might be solo, it might be in a group, but there is still this sort of connection sort of feeling. Reading in a coffee shop. I already spilled the beans on that one. Having a book club or some other kind of group that meets together to talk and nerd out about something that you enjoy. Each of these is just a simple idea. And again, it might take up a lot of space in your life, or it might take up a very small amount of space, but it is something to pull you out. Now, I'm just thinking, I said book club, not journal club. That's really important. Journal club does not count, guys. We want to think of some place where we can show up just as human beings, where we may or may not be good at the thing that we're doing, but there is some curiosity, some fun, some satisfaction. It might be goal oriented, but it might not be. It's something that just helps you feel connected as a human, either to yourself, to other people, or maybe both. Now, I want to point out three, I hesitate to call them hobbies, but I'm going to say three things that I see these physicians spending a lot of time on that I don't think count. Number one, points. There are a lot of physicians who are really strong on the points game. And I can see the merits of it. I can see why people get very into it. I don't think that counts unless you are really, truly taking advantage of the points in such a way that you get to do something like travel regularly and really zen and zone out. That's not usually what I see people doing. And I know that people sometimes spend a lot of time and energy and moving credit card points and miles around and doing this whole gaming. That does not bring us rest and meaning and purpose, right? It scratches the itch probably of accomplishment and acquiring things perhaps, but it is not the same as finding something where you find meaning, joy, connection. Number two, similar shopping, especially online shopping these days. Shopping might be enjoyable. You might like shopping, but when we are shopping to numb or shopping for the sake of shopping, shopping because we are trying to change a feeling, shopping because we're bored, That is not it. You could be really into fashion or whatever things you're shopping for, and maybe the point of the shopping is to help the hobby, but I'm talking about shopping as a hobby. Typically, that leaves us in a space of wanting, and I just see a lot of people falling into debt and bad patterns with that. So again, it might be something that you feel like is a hobby, and yet it's not really doing what we want to do. And finally, scrolling. Of course, I'm going to say scrolling. I think many of us would say that scrolling on our phones, scrolling Instagram, TikTok, whatever we're doing, trolling on Facebook, maybe not trolling on Facebook, we might feel like that is helping with our connection or meaning or whatever. And yet, studies are very clear, right, that we're spending a lot of time on social media. We are not connecting in real life with real humans. We are often shutting other people out. We are not having the same kind of relationships and interactions as we would have in connection with other human beings. You might meet people in real life after having some interactions with them online. But I'm going to say for the most part, what most of us are doing, again, is trying to numb, trying to entertain ourselves, trying to change an uncomfortable emotion, right? We're just numbing out. That does not count as a third place activity, okay? So let's take this back home. What we're trying to do here is we're trying to identify a space in your life, possibly a physical space, but more often some kind of hobby or activity that brings you some joy, some connection, that you don't need your doctor degree, that you can show up as not Dr. So-and-so. And it's also not home where you live with and interact with and have all the chores to do, right? Something else. Now, if you're listening and you just had a baby, if you just started a new job, if you're caregiving for a sick family member, again, you might not have a lot of time, space, or energy, right? It's not the season. You might be able to find one of these things that you can do a little bit of the time from time to time. That's great. But I'm talking to the rest of us who are not in that space, who are trying to figure out, how do we live this adult life? How do we try and find this mystical work-life balance? How do we try to feel human in the midst of the great number of responsibilities that we have? That is the goal. When we feel more meaning in general, more connection, more healthy relationships to ourselves and other people, we will show up better in the places that matter, right? We will show up better at home. We will show up better in our relationships. We will show up better at work. And it will help us to be more effective in all of those places. There is I hate to say it this way, but there is a business case for taking good care of yourself and having a space where you feel connected and engaged that is not home and not work. All right, my friends, that is what I have for you this week. Spend a little time thinking about this one. What are the things, might be one, might be more than one, that help you to feel connected, joyful, engaged, some meaning outside the spaces of home and work? That's what we got. Spend a little time on it, and I'll see you next week. Take care. Well, that's our show for today. Thank you as always for listening. To learn more about my coaching programs, head to www.healthierforgood.com. And if you love this podcast, please drop us a review on iTunes or support the show by clicking the link in the show notes. Until next time, take care.